doing one thing, doing the other thing, doing one thing again, doing the other thing. I went to a like Montessori micro school at the beginning of elementary. And that was full time, but it was in that like smaller setting. And then I went back into public school for like 2 years, I think, a couple years. And then my mom actually started a hybrid homeschool slash micro school where we were in 2 days a week and out 3 days a week, or the other way around. Did all of that, and then my parents are split up, and my sister wanted to live with my dad because she wanted to see what it was like. She's always yeah, she's always so curious about the world. Like ever since she was a little kid, she's like, I want to live with dad. I want to know what it's like. She never did. And he is a great dad. And my mom, like thinking about this as an adult is crazy to me, but like she allowed us to do that. And I'm like, that is so selfless in a way to be able to like let your kid go and like have time with the other parent and experience that. But I went with her because I was like, wherever my sister's going, I'm going.
Aw,
And we went back into public school at that point. So kind of like in and out and in and out.
nice. Gotcha. So, okay, during the homeschool, the micro school, that was at the beginning of elementary. And then what did you do for middle and high school?
So in middle school, like late elementary and middle school is actually when I was in the hybrid homeschool. And
Okay.
then in high school, I went back into public school. So I feel like that was like maybe one of the more interesting transitions to talk about because, on the internet, everybody's always talking about how like our homeschool kids socialized, or what are they going to do when they interact in the real world? All of this. And
Right.
I'm always sitting here just thinking, if you're not sure, you could just like try.
Ask, yeah.
Yeah,
Ask
you could just
somebody,
ask.
try. Yeah. So how was that transitioning from public to homeschool, from homeschool to public? How was that?
It was like so easy. My experience is obviously not the same as everyone else's.
Of
Everybody
course
has a
not.
different
Yeah.
experience. But it was so easy in that I didn't feel any kind of like tension or difficulty with the socializing part. Um, Homeschoolers like interact with other people, obviously, as we all
Yes.
know. So it was pretty like easy and common to know how to like interact with a group of peers, how to interact with the teachers, everything like that. And then quite honestly, like not to sound like egotistical or something, the academics were really easy. And I don't think that was just come upon by myself. It's because we were doing so much in homeschool that we just had already covered that material.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. So I always think about the socializing aspect on the definition part because you look at the definition of socializing, it's typically I think it's like setting like standards, like societal standards, like it's shaping a person basically into how they should perceive different norms or different standards. And so when people talk about socializing or the lack of socializing, I think on the aspect of, okay, they're saying that your child's going to lack knowing what's normal and what's not, or what's cool, or what's in, or what's the, I don't know. It's I don't know, it's interesting. I think about it all the time, especially looking at my girls. All homeschoolers know that socializing or being a social individual is not an issue for homeschoolers. It just
Mhm.
takes you actually talking to homeschoolers. Because I don't know why that, I don't know if that, like, I don't know if that character was perceived in a movie or in a television show, like, oh, the weird homeschool kid or something. I don't know where that narrative came from exactly, but I know during my time in the classroom, whenever I received a homeschool student, they were advanced, like you just said, like they found the academics really simple. Because I feel like it's a different level of thinking, right? Like when you homeschool, because you're being pushed to be so independent about your learning that when you go back into a regular classroom, it's like, oh, this is easy. Oh, they're telling me all this stuff. Oh, she up there modeling, like she's, showing us what to do. And so it's like, I know. So, okay. What is your verdict? Like, how do you feel about homeschooling in general in comparison to public school?
Oh, I was ready to say this at the beginning. I was gonna be like, okay, if you guys are only gonna watch the first 2 minutes of this podcast,
Right.
TLDR, homeschooling's great. You should do science. If you want to talk to me about science, let me know. That's I mean, seriously, I think it's so amazing. It's so cool to see it like blowing up a little bit
Yeah.
and becoming a little bit more common or even just like more of an option for people because when
Yes.
when my mom she says it's like she probably started one of the first like hybrid micro schools. There were others of course at the time too, people have been doing this. But I think I looked up that the very first micro school, however they decided to determine that, was started in like 1973. um, of course there were micro schools before that too, but I think
Of
there was
course.
like that was kind of like the new age of micro schools. um, and now I feel like when I'm just out and about in the world, people are talking about it. There's a what's it called? Kombucha brewery near my house. And we were talking to the owner there, and he is microschooling his kids. They're talking
Oh,
about
nice.
starting like a learning group at in that brewery in the morning times when it's closed. And doing all that. And we were just kind of like going back and forth a lot. I don't have kids yet myself. And we're always just saying like, oh yeah, we're gonna homeschool, or maybe
Uh,
we'll do a pod or a micro school. I just feel like I do attribute a lot of, I think I wrote in my bio, like I consider myself a lifelong learner. And I attribute that to the time spent being able to be independent and curious and kind of like having that freedom to go deep on things rather than wide and make sure to like cover every single specific thing. And I feel like through homeschooling, it allowed me to like do that and have a good understanding of all the academics. Like you said, it's like somehow we're going deep rather than wide, but covering more material at the same time.
yes.
um, and yeah, I just think that I think it's great, honestly, for anybody to be able to spend some time doing it, assuming that they have like the resources and that is possible for them, even if it's not like the entire K through 12. If it is, that's amazing too. But I think it's cool to be able to, I guess, encourage parents like, hey, why don't you try homeschooling for a year? Maybe the elementary years are a great time for you. Hey, maybe like middle school, you want to just like take some time back, do that at home. Maybe high school, because you can't always go back in your fourth. Your kids will be fine, according to me.
Right.
um,
Yeah, no,
and
I agree. I feel like parents, look, if you want to choose a time, from my experience in the classroom, I say middle school. If you want to choose a
yeah,
time
that's what
to
I
homeschool,
was saying.
if you want to choose a time, honey, please, middle school, 6, 7, and 8. Take them home with you and shape those babies and pour into them, affirm them heavily because middle school
Mhm.
is rough. I don't, yeah,
I
it's
have
rough.
to say, one of the times that I was like in homeschool and in the micro school was in middle school. And I like actively tell people that I'm so happy because I like went through all kinds of things when I was in middle school and just like phases. Like I'm my mom jokes that I'm like live a life of phases because I'm always like so in on my like various things. And I was
Oh,
like having like a little like goth punk phase for half of middle school. And then I'm having like this whole other like sporty preppy phase. And then I'm like, oh, I want to be nature outdoorsy. And I never like it's I'm trying to experience the whole world while I'm in middle
yes,
school.
I'm right.
And like having that experience be like at home with luckily my wonderful and loving mother and like my sister and this other group of kids who are kind of being like brought up in the same way kind of like allowed me to not be labeled any of those things, which can be like more common. And not that it's like the world's worst thing if you like go through a phase in public school or anything, but it is kind of different. Like you get that label,
Yes.
you get put in that group, you get like kind of sucked into it. And maybe you like are interested in it, but you don't want to do that forever. Like you change.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So being able to like do that in a little bit safer of a space, I guess, was really nice.
Yes. I just know that like that's just a pivotal transitioning like time in a child's life in general. Because you typically enter into middle school at what, like 12 years old, and you're there from till about 13, 14. That's that,
Mhm.
that top puberty, all those chemicals, the hormones, your voice is changing, you hit your growth spurt, you go home in sixth grade for the summer, you come back in seventh grade, you're about a whole foot, 2 feet taller. Like it's just so much that goes on. Your voices, your voice change. It's so much that goes on in middle school to me that it's just like, and I used to, before I had my own kids, I used to say I was going to homeschool because I substitute taught in middle school, and I just saw just so much during that time. I used to say, "Oh, my kid's going to go to elementary, but I'm going to homeschool in middle school. Like they ain't coming in here. This is trenches. I'm sending my children to the trenches. Too real in here." But I don't know. I just know that I did a lot with seventh graders, and I just feel like that's just the roughest year for kids. I don't know. That's my opinion, of course, my thing. But definitely middle school.
There's like a lot going on at that time. Like you said, you're like going through puberty and you're like moving into adulthood kind of.
Yes.
And then also at the same time being expected to like really like constantly like focus on these various subject matters. They're already starting to like be worried about like what their grades look
Peers.
like, their peers. And then also they have like the pressure of having like their school sometimes determining what high school they go into, if there's like opportunities for like a magnet school or a scholarship if they're looking towards going to like a private school or something like that. And having like all of that on top of like what your peers are doing. My mom literally the other day was like, you kids were kind of sheltered. And I was like, thank you. I said, yes, thank you. I appreciated that.
Not a bad thing, Mom. Please no.
Yeah.
You talk to some of these kids, it's so funny hearing like teenagers say that there's too much going on. Like they're like, it's too much.
Yeah.
These kids are doing a lot. It's like your peers are doing a lot, but it's a lot going on in this time period that I just couldn't imagine being a teenager in school right now. I couldn't imagine that because it bothered me then, and we didn't even have social media. I graduated in '03, so we didn't have like big social media influence. I don't think not Facebook, but MySpace came about until '05, maybe '07. I don't even know. But either way,
Mhm.
like social media wasn't prevalent during my time. So I always talk to parents and tell them and remind them that you don't know what these kids are going through. Okay. Like don't
Yeah.
ever think that you know what they are going through. Don't ever think that your time in school was their time in school, because it's not.
Yeah.
Nah, it's nothing like it.
I saw like an interesting like quote or social media post, or maybe it was a podcast. I'll have to pull up what it was, talking about how we are so focused, maybe not we, the general we,
Yeah.
are so focused on like controlling kids in the real world in an effort to try to protect them and have done like nothing to control or protect their online space. And it's
Mm.
like a complete, and they were kind of talking about, like we don't people are not like letting their kids play outside as much. There's no more like come home when the street lights are on. That stuff is kind of like going to the wayside. But then they had these phones and they're just like on there, and people don't even know what they're viewing, what they're doing, all of that. And I just thought that was a really interesting perspective where I'm kind of like, oh, that's such an interesting point, and that kind of like ties into that, like to homeschool or not to homeschool, especially in middle school. Like if you have your kids there at home, they maybe they still have a phone, but you know you're there with them, you kind of like see them on it, maybe you're able to talk to them and talk them through it. You don't have that whole like 8, 9, 10 with sports like our day where they're just like off on their own, kind of like getting inundated with all of these notifications or messages with like not having that like trusted parent or trusted adult to go to.
Yes, ma'am, you are absolutely right. And I think a lot of people have to take into account really like what we're giving kids when we're handing them a phone. Like you're giving them a
Mm-hmm.
mini computer that accesses everything. And you just think when they go on the internet, one misspelled word or one
Yeah.
or one, one thing can lead them to a whole like dark dimension that you don't even want them to be in, and you may not even find out that they went to because they may not even tell you that they happen upon this
Right.
stuff. And so it's just like really it's really, I don't know, it's a lot as a parent to, I don't, to, like you said, a trusting parent, having a trusting parent to come to with the information that you're receiving off of these lovely devices. That's, think about kids being in elementary school. That's why I always put parents in a visual of. Think about a classroom full of fourth or fifth graders, and all of them have phones. So you got a classroom full of about 25 kids, and all of them have a phone. And they all come to school same day, and they're like, hey, look what I found. Each of them are sharing. All 25 of these kids, this is socializing y'all worried about, right? So all 25 of
Yeah.
these kids are sharing all the neat things that they found late night on their phone while their parents were asleep. And they're just sitting there huddling. All 20. That's 25 different things your child is learning at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
Um,
Wild.
yeah, it's a lot. It's just a lot to think of when trying to, I guess, keep your kids in the know. Like you say, your mom said you were sheltered. My kids, they neither one of them have phones, but they can never say that they were sheltered as far as like not being out and seeing and doing. They do and see a bunch. Some of the conversations we've had, I would have never imagined having with at the time like 5 and 7 year olds, or they're 7 and 10 now. But just thinking about just the conversations we have had over this time period, and it just comes from them knowing that they can come and talk to me. Not
Mm-hmm.
anything in particular, nothing out the wind of I threaten them or anything. It's just the relationship that we built, that they know that
Mm-hmm.
all the lovely stuff that they pick up at the playground, that their friends and
Yeah.
people that they come across introduce to them, they bring it back. Hey, and
Yeah.
Zoe, I'm not always ready for what they bring back, Zoe, but I'm so grateful that they bring